Hello and welcome into today's MM+M webinar. I'm James Fleming, the editorial director here for MM+M and Campaign. And today's webinar is Storytelling as Strategy, How Authentic Narratives Drive Engagement in Patient and HCP Communities. Healthcare marketing is evolving rapidly with a complex regulatory environment and an increasingly skeptical, information-saturated audience. Traditional approaches are no longer enough to drive meaningful engagement or behavior change. In this session, Patrick James Lynch, the CEO and co-founder of Believe Limited, explores how storytelling has emerged as a strategic tool to combat apathy, build trust, and strengthen identity within healthcare communities. Through case studies spanning film, podcasts, and live experiences, attendees will learn how narrative-driven strategies can create deeper, more lasting connections with both patients and healthcare professionals. As a reminder, you can ask questions for Patrick today, and I'll now hand it off to Patrick for today's webinar. Take it away, Patrick.
Much for that excellent introduction. Now I only have the pressure to live up to what sounds like it's going to be a fantastic webinar. So thank you for that. And thank you all for being here for this presentation titled Storytelling as Strategy. As Jameson mentioned, my name is Patrick James Lynch. I am the co-founder and CEO of Believe Limited. Believe Limited is a boutique creative agency that specializes in films, high-impact videos, podcasts, events, and beyond. We work primarily within rare and chronic disease communities and have been in operation since 2011. Over the next 20 minutes or so, I'll share a bit of my story and perspective, along with some case studies from my work history that help reinforce the idea that storytelling as strategy isn't quaint. It's not even a nice to have anymore. In 2026 and beyond, it is a must have. Now, to be honest, even after having done this work for about 15 years, I only barely consider myself a healthcare or pharma marketer. In fact, I'll tell a quick story. One of my classmates at Boston University's School of Theater was a woman named Samantha Futterman. Sam is of Korean descent and was adopted by American parents as a child. Fast forward to young adulthood, and Sam has a cameo in a trailer for a comedy movie that was about to come out. Meanwhile, in Europe, another young lady who grew up in France is being told by friends that she kind of looks like this girl in the new comedy movie that's coming out. So she checks out the trailer, agrees, and decides to track down and reach out to Sam on Facebook. They come to learn that they are both adopted and both around the same age. They pursue it further and, sure enough, find out that they are twins. Their journey to finding each other is documented in the 2015 film Twinsters. And when Sam has been asked about turning her experience into a film, she's referred to herself as an accidental filmmaker, elaborating that as the most significant event in her life was unfolding, the only thing that made sense to her was to try to capture it and tell the story. Now, I tell that story for two reasons. One, support good documentaries, and Twinsters is a good documentary. It's available to rent on Amazon Prime for $3. And two, I tell that story because I relate to Sam's concept. In many ways, I am an accidental filmmaker, an accidental pharma marketer, an accidental creative agency CEO who's driven and motivated largely by my lived experience. I was born with a rare chronic bleeding disorder, hemophilia. My body doesn't naturally produce one of the proteins involved in the clotting process, and I manage that through the routine administration of medicine. My brother Adam was also born with hemophilia about 2 years after me. Tragically, while a freshman in college at only 18 years old, Adam died from an untreated head bleed. This event shook my family, and it disturbed me in a particular kind of way. While in college, my brother fell off the routine administration of his medicine, sustained a minor head injury, went to bed, and never woke up. His medicine was laying in a duffel bag underneath his bed, a mere feet from his resting head. This was not a failure of drug development or access. This was a failure in self-care, more specifically, a failure in identity. You see, growing up, my story included hemophilia. I was pushing boundaries and confronting the physical realities of the condition. My brother was not. I developed an immune response to the best-in-class medication at the time, rendering it ineffective and forcing me to deal with the consequence of largely untreated hemophilia. My brother did not face this added challenge. My story has always included hemophilia and self-management, but my brother's story did not. So how do we help young people, old people, all people? How do we help people living with health conditions make sure that those conditions are in fact a part of their identity, a part of their lived experience? That's the question that my brother's death left me with, and my answer is rather simple: storytelling. Inspired by my brother's life and legacy, I have produced dozens and dozens of projects leveraging the power of entertainment and storytelling to engage, educate, and empower audiences around the country and around the world. There are numerous stories that I could tell, but I'll focus on one about a young boy who we will call Connor. Now, Connor and his family, they participated in a season of the first project I ever launched, a comedic educational bleeding disorders web series called Stop the Bleeding. And when I met Connor, he was struggling, not only physically, but mentally. Bullying, stigma, and social isolation were having a profound impact on this young boy. And to be candid, at only 6 years old, Connor was ideating suicide. As I mentioned, Connor and his family participated in the first ever season of this web series called Stop the Bleeding. They spent time with us and got to know us, and we got to know them. And through the project, they also became connected to other families impacted by hemophilia and began to develop connections within the greater community. Afterwards, Connor's mother shared that experience changed everything. Connor felt seen, heard, and recognized. He made friends and began to see himself within the framework of a larger community. He wasn't alone anymore. Today, Connor is a happy and well-adjusted college-bound teenager. Now, would Connor have gotten to this point in life without Stop the Bleeding? Maybe, probably, but the fact is we will never know. And it was patient-literate, entertaining storytelling that pulled Connor into his community, which changed his life. Here is a hard truth for all of us who are a part of this industry attending this webinar. Our biggest competitor is not the other drug on the shelf. It's apathy and disconnection. My brother had the drug, just not in his system. Connor had the drug, but that was not enough for him to feel whole. Patients, caregivers, and even HCPs have largely learned to tune out our industry because, quite frankly, a lot of what we publish reads like a legal disclaimer or a clinical trial protocol. Most advertisements feel like just that, rinse and repeat advertisements. Some of which are flooding my television during the NBA playoffs this spring. I don't know what data is out there that's connecting basketball viewers to certain health conditions, but boy, oh boy, I'm seeing a lot of the same ads over and over again. And as most of us in this webinar probably already appreciate, data alone isn't enough to move people. We may learn from data, but we don't connect to data. We connect to people, to their stories, to their highs and their lows, their laughter and their tears. We also cannot comply or market our way into a community. We have to earn our way into people's actual lives. Storytelling, well-informed, emotionally authentic, and boldly creative storytelling earns trust and, importantly, creates the environment for meaningful dialogue and eventually behavior change. There are 3 examples of this type of environment-shaping work that Believe Limited has executed, which I would now like to share with you. For each, I'll highlight a few key points, including some related to the client partner. And after sharing the examples, I'll share a few key takeaways before opening up for question and answer. And just as a reminder, you're welcome to ask questions at any time using the question feature down below, and we will get to them at the end of the presentation. Okay, staying in the world of hemophilia for this first example, Dismissed is a 40-minute documentary that tells the stories of women with hemophilia who have been ignored, misdiagnosed, or left untreated for generations. This isn't just a film. It's a tool to address disparities in care and unconscious bias in healthcare professionals. Released last August, Dismissed has been screened at dozens of patient and provider events across the country, and notably was shared with officials at the Food and Drug Administration reviewing information about the prevalence of bleeding disorders in women. Made possible with support from Sanofi, the film, digital campaign, and screening circuit were born strategically in response to women throughout the hemophilia community reporting that their bleeding experiences weren't being taken seriously by their healthcare providers. We believed that if we could pull together a few of those stories and thread them into a coherent narrative, that we would have a film that spoke to women and men, and not just in the hemophilia space, but in general. Let's take a look at a clip from Dismissed.
Years ago, when my son was just a baby, we were in the state of Montana where there is no hemophilia treatment center. And I had been invited to a regional meeting, and I was sitting at a table, and there were other healthcare providers around, and we were having lunch. And I was listening to a nurse describe to me wannabe hemophiliac moms. And I was like, oh, excuse me? And she said, oh my gosh, you have no idea. We have all these wannabe hemophiliac moms who come into the treatment center and they say they have all these bleeding symptoms. And I think they just really need the attention that their sons are getting. They're feeling left out. And that message resonated with me. In fact, it cut really deeply, and I never forgot it because I thought, I will not be one of those moms. I will only talk about my son. I will only talk about my dad. I will never speak about my own symptoms. It's only been in a recent couple of years that I've actually been even willing to speak out about my own symptoms. I was 59 years old when I was diagnosed as a symptomatic carrier. I have imposter syndrome. I deal with this on an ongoing basis all the time. Am I worthy? It's so hard. Am I actually worthy to be seen? I've had bleeding my whole life. I've had dental bleeding for 2 weeks after a tooth extraction. I've had heavy menstrual bleeding that kept me out of work or school. I have had joint bleeds. I have actually had untreated joint bleeds where a man sat next to me and looked at my elbow and they're going, you're having a joint bleed. I have never felt worthy to go in and have a treatment plan because of this idea that women are imposters, that they are wannabe hemophiliacs.
The bravery that Dawn and the whole cast demonstrated allowed us to craft a truly resonant film, as the feedback we have received suggests. Men and women, patients and caregivers, HCPs and KOLs have all spoken up about the impact of Dismissed. Let's take a look at the next clip.
This movie showed the story of 5 incredibly strong and beautiful women. It also told my story. It told my mom's story. This was just so moving to me, and I really want everyone in my community to see it. Make sure you get to see the Dismissed film.
In addition to validating experiences like that young woman's, Dismissed has also helped some viewers recognize their own symptoms of a potential bleeding disorder, proving yet again the power of storytelling done well. The screenings, the coverage, the nominations, the data, and the anecdotes all support that patient-centric storytelling through film has been an outstanding way to shape environment and conversation, at least in the case of women with hemophilia and dismissed. Hosted by hematologists Amar Zaidi and Michael Callahan, Cheat Codes, a sickle cell podcast, is the #1 most listened to podcast in sickle cell disease, reaching community members and key opinion leaders all around the world. Notably, Cheat Codes was first launched independently and then picked up by Agios Pharmaceuticals, who has used the platform not only to educate patients and providers alike, but also to strategically develop relationships with key opinion leaders, healthcare providers, patients, caregivers, and advocacy leaders. I believe that in many ways, in 2026, a well-executed podcast program is the single best answer to information fatigue and scalable asset production. With the right team behind it, a podcast platform can be a powerhouse of a tool for long-term engagement, education, and connection to an audience or a community. Let's take a look at a clip from Cheat Codes.
One of the things that I was thinking about with Dr. C earlier is, when I first came into clinic with sickle cell disease and the patients who live with it, the stories were centered around acute chest syndrome and stroke and pain. But I think as I started getting to know sickle cell warriors, the stories shifted. Now the stories I remember are not about pain and stroke and acute chest syndrome. It's about all the victories. Like I think about, you see people like Tiana and Demetrius thriving, right? And you remember those stories. So for me, this idea that the story of a sickle cell patient is confined to one event feels like we're minimizing the entire human experience of sickle cell disease.
As the format of that video suggests, more than simply an audio program, Cheat Codes has hosted live events and helped Agios open up conversations with the sickle cell community about clinical trials, self-care, and other critical topics. And as a client, Agios has exemplified how a podcast can be leveraged digitally to serve an omnichannel presence and experientially to bring people together for critical conversations. And my podcasting colleagues would not let me execute this part of the presentation without highlighting that another Agios-supported podcast in the thalassemia space has regularly been a first-line resource that patients and caregivers discover when first Google searching thalassemia. Google search thalassemia, discover ThalPals. I think all of us on this webinar can appreciate the power of discoverability through search, social, and increasingly LLMs. As Believe, we're quite proud of ThalPal's positioning, and so is the client, and we appreciate the responsibility that comes with it. Now, the last case study I have to share with you is from one of Believe Limited's favorite programs to execute every year. It's a multi-day workshop experience titled Speak Up, Speak Out that we execute for the benefit of young people with cystinosis, an ultra-rare genetic disorder. Produced in partnership with Amgen, formerly Horizon, Speak Up, Speak Out has become a community staple. It's an activator for a typically reserved community. This program instills confidence, self-worth, and self-advocacy, and it provides Amgen with an incredible opportunity for deep and meaningful community engagement year after year. They're not just writing a check and standing in the background, they are showing up for the community annually and over time. Here's a quick wrap-up video from our first year executing Speak Up, Speak Out.
Okay, raise of hands. How many of y'all have done spoken word before? Okay, me neither.
And I've seen 15 participants go from, I'm sorry, you want me to write a poem? To, oh, I'm going to speak my own poetry on a stage into a microphone.
I've met a bunch of new people, so it's always nice to know that you're not alone.
Welcome, everybody. to Speak Up, Speak Out, the first ever spoken word self-advocacy program for young people in the cystinosis community.
I discovered new energy, started a new journey.
Parents who love and care about you, early morning, late nights, they're always there for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the participants of Speak Up, Speak Out.
One of the coolest things about that program is how many returning participants we get and how many of them go on to become counselors, helping shape the experience for new participants. It's become quite the community program. So now to go back to where I started, patients need to have a strong sense of identity, and that identity must include their health condition. Buy-in is essential for optimal health outcomes to be achieved. The more we, as an industry, can orient our work toward achieving the goal of helping patients and caregivers better identify and cope with their condition, towards helping HCPs better serve their patients, the more our work feels like resources rather than marketing, the more effectively we build bridges between patient and HCP communities and our clients in pharma and biotech. The best products sell themselves when the right conversations are had. Our job is creating the environment for those conversations to take place. So, how do we do it? We're 20 minutes into the presentation. Patrick, give us some of the Believe Limited secret sauce, so to speak. Well, I'll do my best. I've got 3 principles that I'll share with you now. The first, authenticity is not enough. It's the bar to entry. But if you truly want to break through the clutter, creativity is a must. Craftsmanship is a must. Authentic only gets you so far. I'm reminded of something that an acting teacher at Boston University once taught us. He stood in front of the class and spoke about authenticity. And he gave a scenario of being out to dinner. And the couple next to you is having a conversation about their food. Oh, the salad's delicious. How is your steak? It tastes very nice. The seasoning is pleasant. How is your water? It's cold. That's conversation number 1. On the other side, there's another conversation, and a couple is having an epic breakup. The woman says to the man, I know where you were last night, and I called my lawyer this morning. I'm going to take you to... Now, which one of those 2 conversations are you more likely to eavesdrop on? They're both authentic, but one of them is far more entertaining. One of them has a lot more color to it. Authenticity is not enough. It is the bar to entry. We must be boldly creative if we want to stand out. Number 2, when our work responds to real burdens and needs, it really resonates. For example, dismissed. Needs assessments, surveys, town halls, listening sessions. There are myriad ways to collect valuable information that will richly inform your work. Use these tools. Respond to what your audience needs, and your work will resonate. And third, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. None of us are capable of doing everything all of the time. And there are expert partners throughout this ecosystem that can help deliver, distribute, and promote truly meaningful work. Tap into them. All right, now a few last thoughts that I will share with you before we move into Q&A. Again, a reminder, you can enter questions in the chat box feature below at any point. There are 3 final points I'd like to underscore before the Q&A. Number 1 is identity. Identity development is as important as drug development. If the identity of the individual does not include patient with X in some way, then optimal outcomes will never be possible and grave risks may exist. Again, in my opinion, identity development is as important as drug development when it comes to optimal outcomes. Second, apathy. This is our enemy. We need our patients to care. We need our caregivers and HCPs to care. We need to challenge stasis and the status quo. As I recently heard an executive in pharma marketing share, even good marketing blends in. Good isn't good enough. If we want to break through, Creativity, innovation, and adaptability are some of the best antidotes to apathy. And third, no surprise here, storytelling. Storytelling is essential. It's not a nice to have anymore, nor is it enough to produce the same box-checking patient story videos. Be creative, be thoughtful, and tell great stories. Great stories break through to larger audiences, including the general public. And you can do this. I know that we operate in a heavily regulated, complex, and very sensitive environment, but that is not an excuse for not striving to do great work. I believe that you are capable. I believe that you can do it. Well, I appreciate your time and attention and for spending some time with me on this Cinco de Mayo afternoon. We've got some time left. If any of you have any questions, I'm happy to take those. And with that, I will welcome Jameson to join me back on screen.
Thank you for that great presentation, and thank you for sharing so much of your own personal story here today. So let's start off with this first one. For a film like Dismissed and other documentary-style projects, how do you navigate the barriers from pharma review teams? A good old MLR review.
Yeah, I love a good MLR review question. I think my headline here is bring them along. Ultimately, MLR are people, and so often it's one or two people that our colleagues in marketing are ultimately concerned with getting their buy-in. What I have found is that the earlier in the concept process that they can be brought into the plan, the more comfortability that they will have with the project on a whole. As Believe, we have produced documentaries in all sorts of different pathways. We've done it through sponsorship and in commercial departments. We've done it through grants and unrestricted funding. But the bottom line is, if we want to bring MLR and PRC and our colleagues who are overseeing the medical and legal and regulatory, we need to bring them along as early as possible. At the end of the day, they're just people, and they want great work to happen as well.
All right, this is another really good one because I think a lot of marketers can relate to it. They've got an AOR that they really like, but they also like your storytelling approach. How can companies engage with a specialized partner like Believe without it being seen as an either-or decision? So how do you play with that AOR partner on the side?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we very often work in combination with the agency of record for our pharma or biotech clients. Some of the smaller biotechs maybe don't have an AOR, but more often than not, our clients do. And something that we often say is you don't have to break up with your agency to work with us. So what we'll often do in parallel to these agencies of record is make sure that, for example, this documentary project aligns with the larger plan for the brand or the department. We'll make sure that certain pull-throughs that can serve their omnichannel presence, certain clips from the documentary or behind-the-scenes photos, things to keep the drumbeat going, are delivered to the company's agency of record so that they can focus on their good work while leveraging the assets we're creating from our project and making sure that there's good alignment between the two. So of course, there's budgetary considerations, there's timeline considerations, but the headline here is that you don't need to break up with your agency of record to work with an agency like Believe Limited. We simply need to scope out what the project entails and figure out how everybody plays in the sandbox together.
Yeah, and I think you started to answer this next question about how do you extend the life of a project like Dismissed across channels and teams? It sounds like it's part you guys doing the work, but also part when they've got a larger partner, they're the ones also helping distribute some of this and give it more life.
Yeah, our best projects have a combination of, I'd say, like three prongs to the stool. There's what we as Believe Limited are doing to distribute, promote, and amplify the presence of our projects. There's what our client partners are doing on their end to promote and amplify the projects. And ideally, there's an advocacy organization or association that's also been roped into the project in a meaningful way, who's also excited and inspired to share it with their constituents. So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach to distribution, but in general, it is a multi-stakeholder effort. Our agency, the client, along with maybe the client's AOR, and hopefully a patient organization or affiliate group as well.
Got it. And we got another question here kind of about the model of, are you bringing the AOR, are you bringing the ideas to the AOR or to take to the client, or are you working direct to pharma?
It's gone both ways. So we have some really great relationships directly with our pharma clients. And in those relationships, we are pitching directly to the client. And then if we're moving forward on the project, they'll pull in their AOR and the two of us will figure out how to best pull this through to make sure all ends meet as optimally and as efficiently as possible. But we've also been tapped by agencies of record to say, hey, we've got a concept or a loose framework for something we'd like to do, but the execution of it is outside of our scope. Is Believe Limited interested in being a partner on this and working through us? So we've worked in capacity where we're going direct to the client, partnering with the AOR, or we're working directly under the AOR, essentially as a subcontractor. We've done it both ways.
And great. And this one's really kind of interesting because I think a lot of people, a lot of companies in the space are kind of conservative and they want to know if something's going to work. So what's the most effective way to pilot a storytelling initiative without requiring a massive upfront investment in it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously producing a feature-length documentary is an investment. Will it work? Will it be well received? Does the community or audience it's intended for even want it? In some of our best relationships, we've started with a really lean consultancy agreement where we have partnered with the client to do certain needs assessments work, participate in advisory boards or town halls or other kinds of information gathering sessions, and then brainstorming with the client, okay, based on this well-structured and thoughtful patient advisory board, for example, what kinds of formats, what kinds of projects may resonate? Did we get clues that a podcast might work really well? Did we get clues that there's a need for more live events to bring people together, and so on and so forth? That way, by the time we're making the investment into something as robust as, say, a feature documentary or a multi-day workshop like Speak Up, Speak Out, it's really well informed. We have data to support. There's reason to believe this project, well executed, will resonate and have legs. But it can start really small. In fact, more often than not, I'd recommend it should start small because these projects are investments and we want to make sure that we're not just doing something for the sake of doing it, but that it's rooted in real data and needs. As I mentioned earlier, the best work resonates when it's responding to real needs.
All right, this is my last question, unless another one comes in while you're answering. But where do you overall see podcasts and documentaries format or documentary formats fitting alongside the more traditional omnichannel programs?
Yeah, I think what documentaries, I'll start there. What documentaries enable is one of the most elevated, artful, and just beautiful ways to raise up and amplify real world stories. I think a traditional approach to a campaign is all well and good, but where is that patient story being as well amplified as possible? A documentary kind of does that exclusively. That's the whole concept of a documentary. A podcast is arguably the best way to create a two-way communication flow between a client or a pharma company and the audience they're interested in. Every time a new episode is published, that headline, those clips, those breakout pieces of content populate into people's feeds and create a dialogue that enables them to come back to you and suggest future topics, future guests. And that's how programs like Cheat Codes have built up over the past 6 years. So I guess to summarize that, I think podcasts, documentaries, workshops like Speak Up, Speak Out have a place in really legitimately bringing a patient community along for the ride, because sometimes we can be very focused on the deliverables and assets we're creating, and we sort of throw our work at a community as opposed to bringing them along for the ride. I think when we work in these patient-centric ways and in formats like documentaries and podcasts, we almost force ourselves to slow down and make sure we're bringing the community along with us.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for your time here today. And thank you to all of you for joining us here on today's MM+M webinar. I'm James Lynch, editorial director here for MM+M and Campaign. And this was Patrick James Lynch, the CEO and co-founder of Believe Limited. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thanks very much.